Hello, welcome back. Welcome back. This is Coffee and Soul. I am Lauren Day Soul, and I am a medium, spiritual practitioner, energy worker. Welcome to my channel. This is another reading, and I've already started pulling some cards, but I want to go ahead and figure out what I need to read for this one because I had an idea. My original idea was to read for spiritual practitioners, people who are new to spiritual practices, and starting there. But in pulling cards, I got a different message, and so I'm going to go with that. This reading is going to be focused on grief. Focus on grief. I got a message. Let me turn my phone on silent. There we go. Mute. It's my family. They're figuring out Thanksgiving, and I love it. So this is for fall 2023, and this one is going to be about, like I said, grief. And so for folks who are grieving, how do we take care of ourselves as we are grieving? Grief is something that's been very prevalent for me and a lot of people I know for these last few years. A lot of people have lost loved ones. We are also now witnessing collective grief as we, to be honest, witness a genocide. And I'm not shy about saying that either. And so not only are we grieving, but we are actively watching and experiencing the grief of others. And so grief is just something that's going to continue to be present. And then there's the life understanding that as long as we live and we continue to love, we will also have more things to grieve. And so it helps us to get centered in grief. There are some amazing people who do grief work that I follow. And I think the idea of having a practice around grief and just taking time for grief is important, else it kind of blocks up if we don't really take care of it and turns into other things, or just doesn't allow us to be the full expression of ourselves. So this reading will be about grief, and so I'm going to do a reading on, I'm going to scoot this pile over. This particular pile was just me talking to the spirits of like what I should be focused on. But we'll talk about grief, and so I'm going to go ahead and pull some cards real quick and see what's coming through. And it's like I said before, grief is a part of life. We've always grieved. We will always continue to grieve. Grief isn't going anywhere. And excuse me, y'all. And unfortunately, this isn't the end. And this is not to like scare anybody or to, bring energy down. Nothing like that. Like we're here. It's good, but like we're not gonna stop grieving. Like it's gonna continue to be, even if everything gets wonderful and better, like best case scenario, everything works out, there will still be things to grieve. And so just kind of allow yourself to be with that. Grief is gonna be there. So how do we not make friends with it, or make friends with it? How do we honor our grief as opposed to seeing it as this thing that we have to push by the wayside, or this thing that we want to be adverse to? How do we accept the grief and see it for what it is? So let's see. So one of the things is staying grounded, and not just staying grounded on a spiritual sense, but staying grounded on a very, very tangible, just everyday sense. Like making sure that your daily routine, set it. If you don't have a daily routine, set your daily routine. Make sure that you are grounded in that. Like wake up in the morning, take some moments for yourself if you need to. Make sure that the day-to-day things that you need to do to function as a human being, those don't get tossed by the wayside. And so just staying grounded in your daily routine. If you have work, if you're someone who works, hopefully, best case scenario, I say best case scenario already, but best case scenario, you got it like that and you're rich and you don't have to, and you just kind of like wake up in the morning and whatever you want to do is whatever you want to do. That's my goal. But even if that is the case, still having some kind of daily routine is going to help you to stay grounded. And so maybe that's getting up in the morning, making your coffee, making your tea. I have tea today. Yes, this show is called Coffee and Soul, and typically I do drink coffee, but today is tea because I have a friend coming over and I'm sure we are going to make a pot, and so just being good to my body. But again, if it's in the morning, you're taking time for yourself, have some tea, maybe you read a book, maybe you journal, something that kind of gives you your own moment, your own routine before you swipe into the craziness of the day. Maybe not crazy. I try not to use the word crazy, but like the hustle of the day, because that can be a different energy, right? And so it's no longer energy of flow at that point. Now you are somewhat in a responsive state, responding to things that are happening around you, which is out of your control and a bit out of your domain, depending on what your life is like. So giving yourself these moments where you are just to yourself is going to be important. And staying on top of that. And then whatever work you have to do for your life to make sure that your every day is taken care of, do that. And that doesn't mean exhaust yourself, but it does mean making sure you're taking time for those things as well. Okay. I'm going to say this. So spiritual grounding is important. And as a spiritual practitioner, spiritual grounding is something that I definitely prioritize. But I will say this. Prioritizing your spiritual practice, unless you are at the point, and hopefully you are at the point, where your spiritual practice and your life in the physical, mundane, natural, whatever you want to call it, those things are aligned, those things are in sync. But if you're still in that kind of space where you have what people sometimes refer to as like your waking life or your regular life and then your spiritual work, if you're in that space where you're teetering and tottering, balance is going to be key, and balance is going to be important as the two are still integrating. And that's real for a lot of people. And so making sure that you're keeping that balance. You're not going too much on one side and too much on the other side. So you're not spending all day just in spirit, and that is just the only thing that you're doing. You've been there for days and days and weeks on end, and you haven't taken care of your other side, or your conscious life, waking life, whatever you want to call it. But also not the flip. And so making sure that you're still paying attention to spirit as well. But keeping that balance is going to be important. So that's more so about like everyday routine and staying grounded. But I really want to get into like grief. And so what do we do about the grief? So what I'm getting is that we allow the grief to change us in the ways that it needs to change us. And we don't fight that, which is very interesting to me, because I feel like after you get through something very traumatic, or after something's happened, right? Like the want is to go back to who you were before, or the person you were, or the life you had before. And what I'm getting is no, actually allow yourself to sit in it and allow the grief to change you for the better. And that's hard to hear, I know, especially when you've lost a loved one. Like it's hard to imagine like the grief will change you for the better. So maybe for the better isn't the most empathetic words, but allow it to change you and trust the process, that you will continue. And this won't be something, again, you have to be averse to. But as you're going through this grief, understand that you are changing, and allow yourself time for that change. Also know that you'll be okay and you're strong enough to be okay. And in that doesn't mean you have to hold that strength to yourself. Sometimes understanding that you'll be okay and you're strong enough to be okay means also leaning in and asking for help. And that means asking for help from your communities, your friends, maybe a therapist if you have a therapist, grief counseling. If none of those appeal to you, if self-help book is the way that you rock things, then by all means. But know that you can and will be okay. But again, do not be afraid to ask for help and feel like you have to just shoulder everything by yourself, because you don't. Okay. So are there other things that we should think about with grief? So in the same vein of allowing grief to change us, also don't be in a rush to change too much. In the idea of grief changing us and us being on this kind of journey, this pathway, there's sometimes this want to like make something of our grief, right? And capitalism is an easy kind of trick to tell us that we have to monetize things immediately. And you'll see people who monetize their grief, and there's nothing wrong. There's not, it doesn't have to be wrong, but you also don't have to do it. You don't have to make anything of your grief. You can just let the grief be the grief and come in the waves that it does, without feeling like you have to monetize it. Or even when I say monetize, I don't just mean like financial capital, but also social capital. We see it all the time where something happens, and the first thing that we do is we go to Facebook, we go to Twitter, we go to whatever, and we start writing and making a platform out of what we're going through. We don't have to do that either. If that is your process, that's your process. If that's your true, authentic process, that's your process. But we also don't have to do that. We don't have to make a move or make anything out of the grief we don't want to. We can really just be with it and be in it. And so if that means taking time alone, also do that. I keep getting things like remember your strength, and which is something, because I'm typically a person who's like, you don't have to be strong. And I think that's true. I think that's valid. But also you are strong. So you don't have to be, you don't have to exercise your strength, but it is there for you and it hasn't gone anywhere. And so I think remembering that, like, even in your grief, you are empowered. You do not have to use that power. It might not feel right to use that power. You might want to take it easy. I think you should take it easy. But your power hasn't left you just because you're grieving. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else that we should. I'm running out of space here without getting too much of the messiness of my table on the corner. Y'all can't see all that, though. That's okay. All right, so let's see if there's anything else that we should look at. This doesn't feel like a time for looking at homework, but maybe some things that are going to help you along the way, okay? So stopping and staying still, definitely going to help. Again, more strength, just something, but it's feeling more like a, it doesn't feel like a strong, like a grounded strong, so more so maintaining grounding and keeping that heart open, keeping it open for those around you. Yeah, that's what I'm getting for the grief. Now, I will say, from my own personal opinion, let me pull one more card. Well, and you don't have to do anything for it. It's just what I'm getting again. And so I was gonna say is that there are some small grief rituals you can do, and I'm going to say them anyway, but I'm going to say them with the caveat of you do not have to do these things. You will get through your grief, and you will continue to sit with your grief and all those things without doing the things that I'm about to say. They are things that I like to do, It doesn't make the grief go away. It's just how I like to sit through grief. And so want to make that caveat because the cards is like, baby, you ain't got to do nothing. And you don't. I like Epsom salt baths, particularly with things like lavender and rose. If you know what a white bath is, I like that as well. There are a lot of recipes you can kind of look at, and that's a bath that goes over the head. I also like protecting my head, and so I do a lot of scarves and head wraps, especially in times I need more support. And just being very slow and gentle. Candles are good. I am big on journaling. I journal a lot. And so that's something that I like for my process. But again, card says, baby, you ain't got to do nothing. Just sit and be with it. And that's the work. And in grief, I think that's the hardest thing to do sometimes, but that's the work. So that is the reading. It is now fall 2023. This was for the season. Again, my readings are for the season. So 90 days from today, or fall 2023. Today is November 15th. So yeah, if this helped you in any way, please let me know. If there are other things that you want me to read about, please feel free to drop them in the comments. More than likely, though, I'm going to sit with my cards and kind of ask them, like, hey, what should we talk about? But if I can sneak some things in, if they're open to me asking, then I'm definitely down for that as well. So, yeah, if you have not already, please subscribe and hit the notification bell because, again, I didn't say it on this one, but the last video, let y'all know. There's no schedule. I just kind of post as I post. And so to make sure that you see the most up-to-date one, please hit that notification bell. And that's everything. Be well.